Hey guys, and welcome to this video. This will be a video with gameplay in the background of me playing a squad game, doing quite well, and I'll just commentate over it on tips how to win more games, because obviously the aim of the game is to win and you decide how you win. So for example, you can be aggressive and push, which is harder because obviously the more gunfights you win, the higher chance you have of dying to a player, especially if they're good. Or you can camp and just go for the win, which is what I think everyone did at the start of the game, or at least I did. I'd camp on the edge of the circle and just keep going for that win, whereas now I feel like I have the experience and gun skill to help newer players, or just players who still aren't that good and still want to get more wins. And now I've got over 150 wins, so I feel like I can definitely help a lot of players that might be new or just not good. So yeah, let's get into the tips. So this is by far the most useful tip, and this is building. Building is by far the most useful skill in this game, and it's really the biggest skill gap you can make between a bad player, a good player, and a great player. So some tips with building are: high ground. In shooters, and including Fortnite, headshots do more damage, meaning if you shoot them in the head and they shoot you in the body, the person shooting them in the head will win the gunfight. So if you're up higher, you're more likely to get them in the head, and people lower are less likely. So height advantage is super important. Also, it just puts you in a better position. You can see more, you can do more. It's just better for all around gunfights, and that brings me into tip number 2. Okay, so tip number 2 is related to map knowledge, and you don't have to memorize the map and know where everything is, but it's helpful to late game, when you see where the next circle is, look for the mountains. And mountains are obvious on the map, they have an outline, and you can just tell where the mountains are, and you want to go to the highest mountain or mountains that look like they will be in the next circle as well. Because if you're trying to fight someone who has the high ground on a mountain and you're pushing them on a mountain, it's so much harder to push people when they're high up. So this makes you less likely to push them, and if they can keep that high ground, the chances of them winning are so much higher than yours if your gun skill and building skill is equal. Even if the person on the ground is better, the advantage that the person on the hill, depending on how high the hill is, can outweigh the gun skill or just all around player skill of the player on the ground. So high ground on mountains is tip number 2. Okay, now tip number 3 is gun skill, and gun skill can vary a lot from player to player and can depend on a few things. One of those important things is sensitivity, and obviously players want the best sensitivity, and I'll tell you now, there is no best sensitivity. There's no sensitivity that will immediately make you an amazing player. However, I do have some tips and recommendations about this. So my sensitivity at the moment is 8-6, 8 being X, 6 being Y, and I'll tell you why they're different. So when you're building a 1x1, you're going from side to side, right, which is X. You're not looking up and down all the time. So having quicker 1x1s and just building around you is important. That's why I have that at 8, and 8's high, and it only goes up to 10. And then I have my Y on 6, so it's still quite high, so I can still move freely, but it's not as high because I don't need to look up and down quickly, whereas with building you obviously do. And another thing with sensitivity is the higher you go, generally the better builder you'll be, but also the higher you go, the worse aim you'll have. So obviously if your aim's 1, you won't have the best aim because that's way too low. So you have a sensitivity around 4 or 5, then your shotgun aim should be a lot better. And if your sensitivity is like 10, that's what builders like Myth have theirs on. But your aim is likely to be worse than it would be if it was on lower, because if it's higher, you don't see the enemy as slowly, which means it's just harder, mainly in shotgun fights. But You can still be a really good shooter with high sensitivity. It's just harder than it might be if it was lower, but you can get used to it. So yeah, mine's 8 and 6, slightly higher, just because I love building and I think building's more important than shooting. And I tried 10-10 and I actually won a game on it, but I just find it's really hard to aim, in my opinion. I mean, obviously with enough practice I could, but I like 8-6, and that's what I'd recommend if you guys are looking for a sensitivity to try out. Another tip I have for newer players, or just players who need to improve their skill in the game, is landing high populated places and using guns they don't normally use. So in the game you can see I'm using the thermal scope TR for one of the first times. Actually, I never really picked up before this that much, and I did quite well with it. And the reason you want to pick up different guns and land in high populated areas is the more gunfights you can get into, the better, because it's more muscle memory, more practice, just overall better. So maybe you don't go tilted every time, but places like Pleasant Park, retail, just high populated places, because there's no point of you landing somewhere like the edge of Lonely Lodge, surviving the whole game, just to come into a guy that can easily outbuild you because you don't have the correct skills, because you've never really been in gunfights with good people. So this is a tip. And using guns you don't normally use is things like snipers, really. Try and get good with all guns, because say you only get a sniper off the start, you need to know how to use it. And late game, say you're playing squads and other people take the other guns, you want to know how to use snipers. And also it's just better to know how to use all guns, because I play solo a lot and sniping helps so much. And I would say sniping is definitely the hardest thing to do in this game, because there's not only bullet drop, which can be hard, but once you snipe enough you kind of get a feeling. So there's bullet drop, but also bullet lag or bullet delay, and it's basically the time it takes for the sniper. So say they're running from left to right, you need to predict where it will be by the time they've ran in that spot. So it's a lot harder to shoot someone going across your screen from left to right than going up your screen. So say they're straight in front and they're running in a straight line, it's a lot easier because you don't have to predict that. You only need to predict the bullet drop, which is a lot easier in my opinion. So yeah, use different guns and also use different combos for your shotgun. And what I mean by this is, if you have a pump, it's quite hard to use just a pump. Tactical shotguns can be good, but I quite like either a pump, an SMG, double pump. Double heavy is the best, but heavy shotguns are rare, because now heavy shotguns are the best. Pumps were before, arguably, but they did the most damage, and if you did double pump then it's probably the best. So yeah, try out different combinations of guns, see what you like, see what you don't like, and yeah. So I've just got one more tip after this, and this tip will be just to farm mats, since mats from chests have been decreased and also lamb loots have been decreased. It's just a bit harder to get mats, so I just farm. I recommend at least 300, and I normally try and get 500 before going into gunfights. So my final tip, this is just playing with friends really. If you're playing with friends it's more fun, which means if you do play solo you could get bored, and playing with friends is just more fun. It motivates you to play more, motivates you to do better sometimes. Solo can get a bit boring. I mean, I love solo, I've got my most hours on solo by far, but it can get a bit boring if you keep on dying over and over again. And friends will also give you bonus XP and just additional perks that will help you level up. So I hope this video helped you out, and thanks for watching.